Welcome to a special live edition of Go Vote Omaha presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. This is a primary campaign election forum for Omaha Public Power District Subdivision 5, and it's we are live this evening. You can call in with your questions to the candidates. I'm Jerry Simon, a League member and moderator for the forum. The League never supports or opposes political parties or candidates. We present this forum solely for voter education. The format of the forum is as follows. Each candidate will get a 1-minute opening statement, and we'll follow that with questions prepared either by the League of Women Voters or called in from our audience, our viewers. The number is on your screen, so you can call in your questions for the candidates. Following the question and answer period, each candidate will have up to 90 seconds to answer a question. We'll follow with a 1-minute closing statement from each candidate. We'll alternate the speaking order throughout the forum, and a timekeeper will signal the candidates when they have 30 seconds of time left and when to stop speaking. Before the forum, the candidates drew lots to determine their initial speaking order, and I'll introduce them in that order now. There are 6 candidates running in the primary election for OPPD, Subdistrict 5, and 5 of them are here with us this evening. They are Paul Anderson, Colin Cavanaugh, Craig Moody, Don Krupa, and Tom Mulligan. Welcome to all of you. And we'll go right to our opening statements, and we'll start with Paul Anderson.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha for hosting this candidate forum and giving all of us candidates the opportunity to connect with the issues that are important to the voters. My opening statement comes from 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Heavenly Father, turn this nation's heart back to honoring you. We ask you to forgive our sins and heal this land. In your holy and precious name, amen.
Thank you. Colin Cavanaugh.
Hi. Thank you. I want to thank you too, Jerry, for the Women League of Voters. It's a great service that you ladies do, and it's most appreciated. As a 40-year ratepayer here in Douglas County, the last several years, it's certainly come to my attention some of the issues of things that have been going on with OPPD, and as right now myself, I'm entering my 33rd year of public service, 25 years with the Postal Service, and the last 8.5 years in the Douglas County Public Defender's Office as an investigator. I've made up my mind that it was time to get involved and try and make a difference, and that's what I hope that I'm going to be able to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Craig Moody.
I'll echo the gratitude. This is an exceptional organization, and thanks for inviting us tonight. So I just want to mention the 3 reasons that I'm running for this office. The first is I own a small consulting firm that helps really large institutions be more energy efficient. So we work with, as examples, OPS, the zoo, and the Nebraska Medical Center. Point is, I'm in the industry. I've been in it for 7 years. I know it extraordinarily well. I also have a background in finance with an MBA, so I think those 2 things are really important for the board. Second, I'd really like to see OPPD be much more open and transparent in their decision making. I've been to many board meetings and I've seen that firsthand. I'd like to see that get resolved. And third, the energy industry is changing and changing very, very quickly. And if OPPD needs to do a really good job of making sure that they're on the ball and helping to prepare all of its customer owners for a long-time, clean, affordable energy future. And that's something that I'm extraordinarily excited to work on.
Thank you.
My name is Don Krupa. I'm owner of Don Krupa Insurance Agency since 1966. I want to thank the League of Women Voters. I mean, in the past 3 elections, I think I got support from them, which I really appreciate. I graduated from South High School, attended University of Nebraska at Omaha, served 7 years in the military police, and I got elected 3 times MUD from 1976 to 1994. And at that time, I served as chairman of the board 3 terms, and I want to go and represent OPPD, and I think I can handle it and keep the rates reasonable.
Thank you. Tom Mulligan.
Hello, I'm Tom Mulligan. My thanks to the League of Women Voters. Tonight we will discuss an important decision you will make, the selection of a new board member for OPPD. The board of directors have primary responsibilities. They include setting the direction of the company, ensuring proper governance, the selection of senior management, and providing a vision for the future. They serve as a watchdog for the consumer. You, the voters, need to consider the following. Does the candidate have the experience and the knowledge to perform these responsibilities? Are they a responsible, respected member of the community with the ability to understand complex issues and make difficult decisions? I believe I have these qualifications and the experience, and I look forward to your questions tonight.
Thank you. Thank you all for those opening statements. We'll move right along to our first question of the evening, and it is, what should be the long-term plan for power in Omaha? Should we seek to eliminate all use of fossil fuels? And do you support continuing plans to comply with the Clean Power Plan? And we'll start with Colin Kavanaugh.
Yes, I certainly do. There's no doubt that in the near future, probably a lot nearer than what probably most people, I think, even imagine, that we're going to have to move away from fossil fuels, from coal. I think even just quite recently here, I think they've shut one of the plants, coal-firing plants out at the North Omaha plant, down. And we're going to have to be moving more and more to cleaner energy, wind turbines, solar energy, that type of thing, that are safe, clean, don't harm our environment. We don't have to worry about so much about the emissions. And that's going to get here a lot faster than I think what most people probably realize, and that is our future. But in the meantime, it'll be a proper mix of different sorts of energy that we have to use.
Okay, thank you very much. Craig Moody.
The great thing about renewables right now is that the cost has come down dramatically. They're not just good for the planet, they're good economically. If you compare what it costs OPPD to generate with respect to its wind farm on a cost per megawatt hour basis, it's dramatically less expensive than nuclear, it's less expensive than coal and natural gas. So it's, we should be moving away from coal as quickly as we can. With that said, we shouldn't be doing so irresponsibly. We need to be making the right decisions about the right investments in our generation mix. And in no circumstances should we be investing in any way in coal. Yes, Colin's right. One of the units up in North Omaha was recently shut down. They're going to shut down another 2 by the end of the year. So they're well on their way to complying with the Clean Power Plan. And I do think that the Clean Power Plan is important. OPPD is, if it just follows suit with respect to what it already has plans to do, it will be half of the way towards where it really needs to be in order to comply with the Clean Power Plan. So they're headed in the right place. They're about 18% renewables today. They've got plans to get to about 30% by 2018. So they're going in the right direction. I'd like to see them move a little bit quicker. Again, it's the right decision for the planet, and it's the right decision economically now as well.
Thank you. Don Krupa, your answer,
Actually,
please.
like I say, they've seen the article that OPPD put out. Like I said, I talked to Tim Burke, president, and we went over the fuel situation. The coal is coming down. Like in 2018, it looks like it's 31%. It was 48% before that. In 2023, the percentage is 15% on coal, and they're looking forward on natural gas and oil. And myself being on an MUD director, I think I would have an inside help to make that transition smoother.
Okay. Thank you very much. Tom Mulligan.
Well, if you look at the mission of the Omaha Public Power District, it's to provide safe, reliable, dependable, and affordable energy for the community. And so as we move forward as a nation and as a community, we need to approach this this challenge that we have with a sense of urgency and at the same time with caution. Because, we do need to ensure that when we all flip our light switch, we have a dependable, reliable source of electricity. So the district, in their 2016 action plan, 10-year plan, they've set themselves a goal to supply the source of energy will be at least 30%, if not greater, of renewable power sources, and still considering fossil fuels, whether that be coal, and of course I support the reduction of coal because of and I also support the, complying with the emission standards, and as well as the mix with what the nuclear power plant produces. So I think, what we, as one of the other candidates has already stated, we need to approach this with a sense of urgency, but also with a sense of caution to ensure that we do provide what the people expect.
Thank you. And Paul Anderson.
Yes, environmentally speaking, yes, I do take the position that as to how we produce our energy needs, and by using, we need to take care of our planet and do it wisely. I agree with what's already been said on that point. Where I part with an importance that we also, my position is nuclear energy and coal-fired energy is the only energy source that is 24/7 reliable. You can't say that with wind and solar. And that said, I take a different position with regards to the coal-fired plants. I take the position that with respect to the North Omaha plant, I'm opposed to turning off and shutting off the 3 units that will be shut off this month. I feel that they need to redo and get that plant up to the EPA standards like the Nebraska City plan is, and let's keep on burning coal.
Thank you. We'll go to our next question, and this one will start with Craig Moody. And it is nuclear power still a reasonable option given the past problems at Fort Calhoun? How can we be sure it's safe, and is there adequate security at the plant?
It's a great question. That nuclear plant, most people assume that the shutdown of the nuclear plant for a long term was due to the flood. It just so happened that the fire that occurred there was when it was shut down, fortunately. But it was shut down for 1.5 years because it was pretty mismanaged. And OPPD is still digging out of that hole. That was roughly a $400 million cost to them. So, the nuclear plant's a tough one because it is the most expensive when it comes to generating. It's about $80 per megawatt hour, which is about 4 times what they could buy power for on the open market. So it's not really a really good producing plant economically speaking. The challenge, however, is you can't just shut it down and throw the keys in the river and walk away. It needs to be decommissioned, excuse me, if you decide that you don't want to continue to invest in it. Decommissioning a nuclear plant costs upwards of about $2 billion. Now, OPPD has been setting some funds aside to pay for that, but they don't have $2 billion to do so. So there are some really, really hard decisions that need to be made with the nuclear plant that are coming very quickly. I don't have answers as to whether or not the security is adequate. I'm confident that it is. I would guess the NRC would say so as well. But I think the nuclear plant is going to be a high priority for OPPD and the board to make some really hard decisions in the future.
Thank you. Don Krupa.
First of all, when I met with the president and chief executive, they have a deal in force right now for safety, and they're expanding that, and I'm all for that. When I was on the Metropolitan Utilities Board, I met each week with I knew exactly what was going on. Right now, I look at the management down there, is pretty super management when they put Mr. Burke in. And like I say, myself, I think it's very important that we keep the nuclear plant. Nuclear plant, like I say, right now, coal, they're going to drop down 15%. They're going to increase the gas and oil to 17%, where it's only 1% way back a few years ago. So right now, I think, to me, I'm satisfied with management. I think there's some, we could look at it a little closer, and they got a safety plan in force. So I'm with them on that right now.
Thank you. Tom Mulligan.
Thank you. The bad news about the nuclear power plant there at Fort Calhoun is that it has had a substantial amount of problems in the past. The good news is that they just received an inspection where they are able to operate under normal operating conditions for the next year. So it shows to me that the Power District has taken the necessary steps to ensure that we are operating a safe nuclear power plant at this time. The NRC is probably one of the most stringent federal agencies in the country, and I think a lot of those problems should have been caught earlier than when they were caught. But the power company, the Power District, has taken the necessary steps to hire a more experienced operator to handle the nuclear power plant. And at this time, it does create about 30 to 35% of the energy that we use for the Power District. And so I believe it's something that needs to be continuously looked at as we move into the future.
Thank you. Paul Anderson.
With the recent attack that happened in Brussels, it's recently come to my attention through the World Herald that, and the President recently touched on this subject of the security involving the nuclear materials that are needed and used to, not only in the medical world, but in producing nuclear power. And I agree with his concern. I'm not that familiar with what the security picture is like at the Fort Calhoun plant, but I do agree that we need to make sure that catastrophes and terrorist attacks don't have access to those kind of materials that could create a lot of suffering. I feel that we probably need to, as I said earlier, the nuclear plant and coal plants are the only plants that we can rely on 24/7. And we need to make sure that the security is a high priority.
Thank you very much. Colin Cavanaugh.
I would support the nuclear plant that we have out there. It's, nuclear is clean, and if you handle things correctly the right way, it's pretty safe mode of operation as well. The things that have concerned me as far as what has kind of went on out there is that what happened several years ago when the plant was shut down, and the lack of transparency, and quite frankly, I think a waste of our money. I think, like what Craig said, I think it was in the neighborhood of $400 million now that we're paying to run that plant out there, after also paying, I think, in proximity of about $1 million to OPPD employees severance pay out there. As far as safety goes, I don't know a great deal about that out there right now. I certainly hope that they have enough after, in lieu of what has happened in the past several years here going forward, and I feel fairly confident that management has realized what happened and taken steps to move forward in the right direction there.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a question from our viewers that was called in, and I want to remind our viewers that we are live and you can call in questions. And that question is, do you support the recent rate restructuring, which raises the fixed fees for the customers? And we'll start with Don Krupa.
Well, first of all, when I seen that, I was very disappointed. When somebody conserves energy and we penalize them, I'm against that. High energy users, we should take a look at that. My goal, when I put my name for this office, is reasonable rates for the ratepayers. And if we look back on my tenure at MUD for 18 years, I was strictly for the ratepayers, and I will do the same for OPPD.
Thank you very much. Tom Mulligan.
Well, you don't like to second guess anybody, and I think it really drives home the fact of the difficult decisions that a board of directors has to do for a company. That rate structure, the package that was passed, tries to more equitably distribute the cost of maintaining what it takes to transform, to deliver the electricity to all of the customers, whether they be residential or commercial. And if you look at the infrastructure that the power company has to maintain, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'll just use a quick analogy. I used to kid, that you can't build the church for Easter Sunday. But with a power company, with the mission that they have, they do have to build the church for Easter Sunday. Because when I want to turn on my light switch, when I want to turn on my air conditioner, when I want to turn on my furnace, I expect that power to be there. So it's a real challenge. If elected and when elected, I will do whatever I can to control those costs so that we minimize the impact to the consumer, whether it be the industrial consumer, the commercial consumer, or the residential consumer.
Thank you. Paul Anderson.
I agree with what Mr. Kruka said. What I add to that, I just, especially the residential rate users, I don't understand how the board could implement this fixed rate increase, especially to the ratepayers, which I call stockholders, who live on a fixed income. I have sympathy for those ratepayers, and I agree with what Mr. Kruka said. I believe the board needs to take another look at that vote.
Thank you. Colin Kavanaugh.
Kind of citing right in here what was just said there. I recently talked to a couple ratepayers and who very much were kind of upset with what had happened with the new rate structure. And they're folks that are on fixed income. And this one gentleman was telling me that he wasn't sure where that money was going to come from to pay his bill. He had a little bit of savings, and he's afraid that would probably be where it would have to come from, that his budget is so tight. When you're on a fixed income, it's very difficult. I would not have voted for that rate structure. You cannot raise rates disproportionately on people in the low-income class in a city. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. And in the same vein, allowing big users of power in the city, that you actually lowered some of their rates. I think it could have been done differently. I think it could have been done better, and I would hope to affect some change in that fashion should I become a board member. Thank you.
Thank you. And Craig Moody.
So I've knocked on probably maybe 2,500 doors, 2,000 to 2,500 in the last month, and this is unequivocally the issue that is on people's minds. People are upset about it, and I agree for the reasons stated by some of the gentlemen with me. It punishes those that have done a good job of being energy efficient and conserving. It's going to raise costs for primarily low-income users, people who are having trouble making ends meet to begin with. And quite honestly, one of the biggest issues as it relates to this is the process that they went through. You know, OPPD said that they studied this for 3 years. Once it got to the board, it was pretty well refined. And I can't say that the board or OPPD management, they didn't appear to be terribly excited about really listening to the public's input and changing what they were planning to do. I think it's fair to say, even though, and I was at many of the board meetings and some of the community forums around this issue, and there was a groundswell of feedback that they were getting. And at best, I would say that they sort of trimmed around the edges the program that they had already planned. There are better ways to do it. There are undoubtedly better ways to do it. I've studied it extensively. The rate restructuring was the wrong move, and I would definitely work actively, if elected, on that issue to address it.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another question that was called in by a viewer. If you don't support the rate increase, what other options for revenue might OPPD have in the future? And we'll start with Tom Mulligan.
Well, and as I said earlier, you know, I'm not here to second guess what the board has already passed. In my first answer, you know, I tried to explain the challenges that a company like OPPD has in making sure that the infrastructure that they have or using is safe and reliable. So it's a very difficult question. You know, the fairness issue, I think, probably comes to mind first, because, you know, we as users, we all expect that electricity, that power source, to be available to us. And in order for that to happen, the infrastructure must be in place, and for the infrastructure to be in place, there's got to be a sufficient revenue stream to ensure that that is there in a safe and reliable condition.
Thank you. Paul Anderson.
My thoughts on this, possibly an approach would or could be to leave the fixed rate just the way it is. Don't alter it. Another thought that I have, like this caller who just called the question in, if I am granted the honor to be on the board, I feel one of the best approaches would be is to go to the ratepayers, get their input as to how they feel about a rate increase or no rate increase. And I agree with what's already been said too. I do not understand if a ratepayer reduces the amount of kilowatt hours that they are using by making their home more energy efficient, reducing their electric bill. I don't feel that they should be penalized, so to speak, by a fixed rate. And the other thought that I want to impart, it's an understanding most commercial businesses obviously use more electrical power, and I feel they should pay for what they use.
Okay, thank you. Colin Cavanaugh.
Well, one of the things certainly as you move forward into the future, and I think any big company of sorts, when you're having difficulties trying to maintain costs, is you have to look at yourself from the inside out, and you have to go to your employees and be a bit more innovative, and you have to come up with and develop perhaps new type of products to create revenue. At the Postal Service, when I was there, we were in very dire straits a certain time frame back 15, 20 years ago. And fortunately for them, we talked to some of the employees, developed some teams, and we decided that we could deliver packages. We needed to go after that. UPS didn't really want to deliver a lot of the packages in residential areas. And in short, it probably saved the Postal Service's life at the time and future, as they are delivering one heck of a lot of priority mail packages. Now, My understanding is OPPD has developed what's called an innovation team. I think that is maybe starting to kind of look at this type of thinking, and I would be very much wanting to try and push that along and support that, as I think that's where the future is for them.
Thank you. Craig Moody.
So the first fallacy is that revenues were dropping from 2014 to 2015, and they weren't. They were up 2 to 3%. Meanwhile, costs were up about 2%. The big difference was retail sales were up 3.6, while wholesale, which means on the open market, the Southwest Power Pool is down 12%. And why that is a whole other story, but let's not kid ourselves. The retail sales have been doing generally just fine. Now, the question, however, was, okay, if we're not going to do rate restructuring, then what should we do instead? And I'll answer that question. First, they're transitioning to smart grid technology, and what smart grid is going to allow a PPD to do is that it's going to give them a variety of different pricing alternatives and options, rather than just the simple per kilowatt hour that they're doing, regardless of when you're using it. And the main thing that they'll do, which is what they do with some of their larger commercial customers, is they change the rate that you pay based on what your peak demand is. So whenever you hit that peak during the day, during the month, during the year, that's going to be at a higher rate, because what they don't want to do is have to build another power plant for that. Second thing that I want to take a look at is on-bill financing. That's something that they can definitely do, and there's a nice revenue source for them. And the last would be to incentivize electric vehicles. Most people, when they're plugging in their electric vehicles, is at night. That's when their demand is the lowest, and it's a great way for them to supplement what they typically are paying for at night, which is streetlights.
Okay, thank you. And Don Krupa.
Well, first of all, I think I would push for more wind turbine farms. As we can see in the last brochure, service brochure, I think the wind turbine farms would spur economic growth all over Nebraska, across the state. I think it's important, like we mentioned, electric vehicles. Myself being with the natural gas, we got liquid natural gas cars, and they got stations around town already that we could push that. With my knowledge with how MUD is run, being a chairman 3 years, we could go in there and get a good price on making those liquid propane powered. Also, I think it's important that we, let's see, I forgot my thought a little bit there. But I think it's important that we, like the percentage of gas, there we go, I finally come back to me. Being a full-blooded bohunk, it makes a difference. I think, like say, when we get, well, I'm lost.
Thank you.
I'll end there. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Thank you. We have another question called in by a viewer, and with this one, we'll start with Paul Anderson. The question is, do you acknowledge that climate change is an important issue caused by humans, and that the OPPD board members need to help address it by working to reduce emissions from electricity?
Yes, I do. As I said earlier, we need to take care of our planet. And I also said earlier that I favor keeping the Fort Calhoun plant as well as the Nebraska City plant, the coal-fired plant, because coal, we have an abundant supply of that energy right here next door in Wyoming. And both of the coal-fired plants and the nuclear plants it's a clean energy burning source, and it's reliable 24/7.
Thank you. Colin Cavanaugh.
I think certainly climate change is, in my mind, I don't see how anyone can deny that that's certainly a factor and becoming very quickly, increasingly, a very important factor in the world's climate. All you have to do is look at the icebergs into various areas where those are at, and the rapid melding away of those, which is increasing the water mass throughout the world. Yes, it's something that we have to very strongly consider, and sooner than later.
Thank you. Craig Moody.
I would agree with these two gentlemen. There's unequivocal scientific evidence that climate change is not only real, but it is caused by humans. So let's just move on from there. I trust the scientists in my world. You know, it's a little bit scary when you look at it. There's a recent article projected the potential for a 6-foot increase in sea levels by the end of the century. You talk about mass disruption and chaos. That's people fleeing from the coast, which is where all of our population is. And where do you think they're coming? So it's not just on the coast as well. There are local impacts. We've looked at this very closely, and there are definitely going to be issues that we in Nebraska need to address if climate change does continue unmitigated. And that's just not about, you know, that's not just a Birkenstock wearing sort of thing. This is an agricultural issue. It's a huge agricultural issue. With that said, the law requires OPPD to provide reliable, affordable, and environmentally sensitive power, right? So that doesn't mean that we are just going to immediately stop coal. We've got to be respectful, responsible, and we've got to be thoughtful about what this is going to look like. And that's something that I'm really well positioned to do, is to help OPPD think about what this transition needs to look like and to ensure that they move through it in a smart way, but yet quickly. And that's something I'm excited to work on.
Thank you. Don Krupa.
When I checked with the chief executive of OPPD, they've got some committees in force right now looking at this. And I'm going to leave them with the architects and the people that got a little more knowledge than that. Like the coal, I'm still see the reduction of coal, which is, like I say myself, when I lost my thought before, it was on MUD on the gas, which they're going to increase to 17%, where they only had 1%. And so that's a natural cleaning better than coal, and probably less expensive. But I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Tom Mulligan.
Well, not only are we facing a climate change, but we're facing an industry change. And of course, that's been a big part of our conversation so far here tonight. With regard to coal, I mean, I can remember when low sulfur coal, which is mined up in northeastern Wyoming, was going to be the answer to a lot of our problems with the emission standards. Of course, now the emission standards are being changed, and a lot of our coal-fired plants are being switched over to natural gas, which makes good sense. However, what the caution that I throw to the wind is this, is today we're paying approximately $2 per 1,000 cubic feet for gas, natural gas, and natural gas is predicted to be, the price will be around $4 by the end of the year 2017, which is a 100% increase in cost. So as I mentioned earlier, you know, the change that the path that we take down, the change that we make needs to be with a sense of urgency, as well as with caution, because, you know, we need to ensure that the power supply that we do provide to the public is affordable.
Thank you. Our next question, do you support privatizing public utilities? And we'll start with Colin Cavanaugh.
In a word, the answer would certainly be no. I think the format that we've been under since, 1946, I believe, has worked pretty well. It gives people, I think, a sense of pride to know that they own a small piece of the utility. I think it gives employees a great sense of pride, knowing that as a ratepayer, they're part of the ball game too. They own a piece of the action. So. No, I would not want to support privatization at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig Moody.
I don't either. You know, Nebraska is the only 100% public power state in the union, and I think that's a really smart decision that we made a long time ago. You know, the three main benefits, in my view, of us having public power. One is that it respects and requests public input. And that's something that I value greatly, and I think OPPD can do a better job of that. You know, if you were to privatize, one of the things that would happen is that outside investors come in to take over. And that means that those dollars, our dollars that we're keeping locally for the most part, are going to just get spread out and go elsewhere. So I like to keep that economic impact local. And then, finally, there's no profit motive for OPPD. It is a governmental agency. It is not required. It does not desire to make a profit. So when that profit motive comes in, what that typically means for investors is that they're going to be looking for a 7 to 8, if not 10% return, which is going to drive up costs. We need to keep public power. I just think we can do it much better. I think there are some opportunities for us to improve the way in which we're operating our public power district.
Thank you. And Don Krupa.
Well, I'd be against it also. Like I say, the ratepayer would have a minimum input. And I like open door meetings and where the ratepayer has something to say. Just like this, when they created this, when you conserve energy and they're going to charge you more. To me, that was so ridiculous, I cannot believe it. So, no, I'm against it.
Thank you. And Tom Mulligan.
Not only does the great state of Nebraska have a unicameral, but it was previously mentioned, we're the only state in the union that still has public power districts. So it is a state law that Nebraska, the way our system is set up by law. In order to have that change, it needs to be introduced and passed by the legislature as well as signed by the governor. So does it work in Nebraska? Well, I think the one thing that we all need to look at is the fact that, as a district, we pay approximately 15% less for our electricity than anywhere else in the country. So, are we doing it exactly right? No, I think there's things that can be done better. The OPPD's 2016 transformation plan calls for a $60 million budget reduction for the year 2016, which is going to take place through efficiencies, within the company. And I think we have to continue down that path to look inward to do a better job of running the company. But unless there is some groundswell or a clamor from the general public to change the way the system is set up, I am not in favor of privatization.
Thank you. And Paul Anderson.
As it's previously been said, Nebraska is the only state in the nation who has publicly owned utilities. I stand firmly opposed to privatizing. It's my understanding that the motivation behind privatizing is that it'll save the taxpayers money. As recent evidence, I will point out to you all, the state of Nebraska went ahead and privatized the Health and Human Services. And look what kind of mess that created. I stand firmly opposed to any privatization of OPPD. It makes no sense at all.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from one of our viewers. What specific experience do you have in the energy industry that will help when you are on the board of directors? And we'll start with Craig Moody.
I like that question. I've been in the industry for the last 10 years. So the last 7 years, I've owned a small business that consults in the energy industry. We were actually the 2015 Small Business of the Year, as named by the Chamber of Commerce. So a big part of our work is focused on helping really large institutional customers reduce how much energy they use. Thereby, they save, in many cases, millions and millions of dollars a year. Before that, I was a facility manager of the Federal Reserve Bank. So again, I've got that energy expertise that is really, really important to this job. And that's something that I think is really important. A lot of the issues that we've talked about tonight are big, weighty, important, in many cases, global issues. And having somebody on that board that has 7 years of experience, who is in it every single day, studies it on a regular basis, in my view, is a really important component of a board member. So like I said, I've got plenty of experience in the industry, and I'm looking forward to applying that to the OPPD Board of Directors.
Thank you. Don Krupa.
First of all, I'm glad that question was asked. Like myself, I was elected 3 6-year terms for Metropolitan Utilities District. I was chairman of the board 3 years. So I worked in this industry, the energy. I think it's important when we make some decisions, you can't make them yourself. When I was on the board, there's 7 members on that board. You have to get along with everybody. You got to get along with management. I've got the knowledge, I worked with energy, and I'm going to put forth that effort on OPPD.
Thank you. Tom Mulligan.
Well, for approximately 40 years, I worked for one of the largest railroad companies, if not the largest railroad company in the United States, the Union Pacific. We were one of the largest transporters of low fossil fuel, low sulfur fuel in the United States. And along with that goes responsibility of timely deliveries to a number of major power plants within the United States. And it drove home the importance of how many people actually depend upon, the whole pipeline that is involved in producing energy. Just to give you an example, the city of Houston at one time used 1 trainload of coal every single day in the production of electricity. So the utilities industry is a changing industry. The transportation industry was a very changing industry. When I remember years ago, those coal trains had 5 crew members on them. Today, there's only 2 crew members on each one of those freight trains delivering coal, which is a considerable cost savings. And the savings, the lessons learned that I realized from the railroad company could be easily transformed into the energy business.
Thank you. Paul Anderson.
My answer will be similar to Mr. Mulligan's. He, like I, are retired from the railroad. I work for the other railroad, the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, in the transportation industry. I know that's probably not directly connected to energy experience, but I certainly know and understand the importance of the transportation system as to the energy needs of this, not only the state of Nebraska, but our nation.
Thank you. Colin Kavanaugh.
Well, I'd relate once again myself back to my Postal Service experience, and we took a look some years ago at the fact of our vehicles burning gas and started to make a movement to convert some postal vehicles to natural gas. And there was talk, it didn't happen before I left there, but I know that there was talk at the time of moving some vehicles, and I think actually it was taking place on the East Coast, of converting some vehicles to electric as well. So I've had some experience there, and I think that's certainly something that could be considered being done here, and I think actually might even be done on a small basis at OPPD right now, but I would certainly work to encourage that and facilitate it.
Okay, thank you. Another question we have. In 2009, the legislature passed LB 436, which directed utilities to implement net metering, which credits a customer generator at a retail rate for each kilowatt hour produced. Currently, OPPD credits solar households at the wholesale rate, while the Lincoln Electric system complies with the retail rate credit. How does OPPD justify the deviation from state regulation? And we'll start with Mr. Krupa.
Well, first of all, I would have to depend on my general manager in this situation, our legislative people down there. That's got to be corrected there. Rate-wise, myself, what I'm concerned about is the rate our ratepayers are paying. And we're going to cut costs down. We're going to work to get the energy very reasonable for them, and that's my goal.
Thank you. Tom Mulligan.
To be very honest with you, I have no knowledge of that level of detail. on a matter such as that. But that goes back to my original point of the role of a board of directors, and it's to provide overall direction and governance, and to select the leadership team, the individuals who will lead the company, as well as provide a vision for the future. So if something like that was brought to my attention as being a board member, of course I would immediately be in touch with our management to see if we are complying with state law as it was intended to be complied with.
Okay, thank you. Paul Anderson.
I'll go back to what was said earlier regarding the vote pertaining to the fixed rate for residential as well as commercial customers. What the people pay, they should pay according to the amount of kilowatt hours they use, and they should not be penalized if they conserve on their electric bill.
Okay, thank you. And Colin Kavanaugh.
I agree with what Paul says there too, but also I think you definitely would have to speak with your folks in upper level management, and perhaps might even consider consulting with some outside experts as well. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. And Craig Moody.
So the challenge here is that that retail rate. If I go and invest in solar on my house, all of us have generally agreed that climate change is an issue and we're causing it. So one of the things that the district should be doing is not only in and of itself moving towards more clean energy, but it should be helping its customers do the same. And a big part of that is if I've installed a solar array in my home and I'm producing more electricity than I need, what that affords me the opportunity to do is to sell it back to the district. Currently, those that have that capability are only selling it back at about half of what they would typically buy it for, which is the issue. That's the wholesale rate rather than the retail rate. So I definitely think that OPPD should be allowing people to sell back electricity at the retail rate. It's not, it's a terribly inconsequential amount of money at this point for the district. There are a small handful of people that have the kind of solar array in this community that it's actually going to build up enough electricity that they're going to need to sell it back. But yeah, it's an important issue, and again, I think OPPD needs to do what it can internally, but it should also play a much more active role in helping its customers do the right thing as well, and this is part of that equation.
Okay, thank you. And this will be our last question of the evening before we go to the closing statements. Are there plans to bury more power lines underground, and how much of a priority should this be? And we'll start with Mr. Mulligan.
I don't know if there are any plans to bury some of the existing overhead lines, but I do know this. It's a standard today for new construction for cables and power lines to be buried. And living in a neighborhood where that is the case, it's a great advantage, and I would applaud any effort that the Power District has, any plans that they have, any expenditures, any funds that they would have to expand that program. It creates for a safer condition, much more reliable source of energy during storms and weather conditions where power lines are affected. So it's a real plus for the community. Is it a huge expense? Yes, it is, but it's one of those situations where you have to do a cost-benefit analysis.
Okay, thank you. Paul Anderson?
I'm not that familiar with what the OPPD plan is as far as burying the power lines. At the personal experience, shortly after my wife and I moved into our current home is when we experienced the snowstorm, which a lot of residents lost power for roughly 9 days. And we consequently made the expensive decision to have our power buried from the service pole. I I do feel it makes more sense that if the power lines are buried instead of having them on the poles.
Thank you. Colin Kavanaugh.
I agree too. I think, my knowledge is not real great here either, I have to say that. But I think continuing to probably bury the lines is probably a good idea. I think in a general rule, it's a bit safer than the way that we used to do it. I think there has to be certainly heed and concern about following all the various safety regulations concerning that, and that's getting the word out to your supervisors and people in the field to basically follow safety and precaution in your daily job.
Thank you. And Craig Moody.
Yeah, the above ground power lines, indeed, it's extraordinarily expensive to bury those things, and I can't honestly foresee OPPD making that investment anytime in the near term. That doesn't mean that it doesn't deserve to be looked at, of course, but for the most part, I live in a home that has an abundance of power lines all the way around it, and one of the things that goes along with that is the tree trimming program that OPPD has as well, in order that the trees are cut back pretty extensively from the power line so that reliability is maintained. So it's a really complicated issue. It's a really costly thing for them to do, and again, I think it begs to be looked at, but I can't say, I don't think we should be making any promises about that happening anytime soon. They've got some more important things to do, quite honestly.
Thank you. And Don Krupa.
Well, I think, anytime you can bury the power lines is fine. But the thing about it, we got to look at cost-wise. And that's why we have committee meetings, like at MUD. We had committee meetings. They discuss the cost-wise. You got to do that. You got to work together. You just can't say, well, let's bury them. They got to go to our contractors. They come out. They analyze it. They put the bids out to the directors. The directors say, oh, okay, that's a good job to do. And like myself, we pay these managers big-time money, over $400,000 for, I won't name the one. But let's leave it up to them, the committee meetings. And when we got with MUD, we worked together. I keep on bringing up MUD, but we had committee meetings all the time. We met, we went over cost. And you have to do that so it keeps the rates down for the ratepayers.
Thank you. Now we'll move to our closing statements, and we'll start with Paul Anderson.
I, Paul Anderson, pledge and promise to you, the ratepayers, stockholders of this publicly owned company, that I will be fully accountable to you. I hope to earn your vote on May 10th. These are the motions I will make at the January 2017 meeting. My first motion will be to rescind or redo the residential and small commercial customers' fixed service charges. My second motion, to change the starting time of the regular monthly meeting from the morning to an evening hour. This would allow the working ratepayers the opportunity to attend the meeting and be heard. Also, those attending the monthly meeting would be allowed to park in the OPPD garage free of charge. My third motion, to spend the necessary dollars to get the 5 coal-fired power units at the North Omaha plant to be in full compliance with the EPA.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Colin Kavanaugh.
Well, certainly, I pledge to do everything that I can, should I be elected, to keep rates in check and to continue to develop a clean, reliable, safe mix of energy. And kind of going along with what Paul just said there too, I too would support and move to change the meeting time. I would say probably move the meetings to maybe 3 or 4 meetings in the evening, perhaps maybe in the summertime, to give ratepayers, folks at work, a better opportunity to come down and go to meetings. And along with that, I would also make effort to try and make happen. When ratepayers come down during the daytime to these meetings at OPPD, they're allowed to talk for 3 minutes. That's not really very long, and I would move to get that to 5 minutes.
Thanks. Craig Moody.
So, three things. Kudos to these two gentlemen for talking about the manner in which board meetings are held and when they're held. Those are things that relate to the transparency and public openness that I think needs to be resolved. I want to underscore to you, the voter, just how important this election is. OPPD is a $1 billion a year company. It covers 13 counties. It has 800,000 customers. I think it's fair to say it provides a base necessity for people in this country. It's really important who you elect. And to be quite candid, I'm the only candidate that's sitting up here that has demonstrated experience in the industry in the last decade. I think that's a really important qualification for this office, and I would appreciate your vote May 10th.
Thank you. Don Krupa.
First of all, I'm going to thank League of Women Voters again. And there's qualified candidates, more than one. But like say it, my obligation here is to keep the rates reasonable for the ratepayer. We have to keep costs down. That's why we have committee meetings. That's why we got management people up there. They're getting paid this big dollars. We have to sit down, and I used to sit down every Monday with my general manager and go over the problems, cost-wise and everything, contract-wise. I'm going to do the same thing, and we're going to get those rates so it's reasonable for the ratepayer.
Thank you. And Tom Mulligan.
Well, much was discussed here tonight, and I hope that the information that we have provided was useful to you, the voters. I know it was very useful to me. I think this has been a very good conversation. One issue that I didn't hear discussed much, and I wish we could have discussed a little bit more, was the importance of energy to economic development for this state. You know, approximately 1/2% of the population of the United States lives in Nebraska. And that makes it extremely hard sometimes to attract new business to our state. We've got a governor today who is very proactive as far as trying to reduce our taxes. I applaud those efforts. And I think our utility company, the OPPD, needs to take that same position insofar as to continue to keep our rates low so that we can continue to attract the businesses that we need to support our population.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all the candidates for participating in our forum this evening. For the League of Women Voters, I'm Jerry Simon, reminding you to inform yourself about the issues and candidates. And on May 10th, go vote Omaha.